What's up guys, KplaysHere. Today we're going to be talking about the second horn that came to us in the Title Update 2 content, Allysyl Muse. The spirit of rebellion lives on in the enhanced form of the Vadya Muse. True to that flavor text, Wild's iteration of the Seregios horn rebels against its legacy of being a top tier option in its original game by being exceptionally mid this time around. At least at first glance. Yeah, that's right, I'm ripping the bandage off immediately. This one could have been great, but unfortunately the cards just didn't quite fall in the right places. And it isn't the first time either. Someone clearly hasn't been a fan of the old chicken leg, because they haven't let it be truly great since 4 Ultimate, where it was one of the top 2 non-relic options alongside Gogmazios' Hunting Horn, which I would absolutely love to see make a return, by the way. I don't want to make this vid all gloom and doom though, because to be fair, this has probably been the closest it's gotten to being strong again. A lot of things line up pretty nicely for this horn to make it decently usable with the shift of your armor and playstyle. But unfortunately, there are other factors that just hold it back a slight bit too much for me to consider it a staple in our arsenal. I'm going to try and cover both the good and the bad of Allysyl Muse and share how to reach its full potential if you choose to do so. But first, as always, we need to hear how the thing sounds. Nice soothing flute tones for something that looks like it'll gouge your eye out if you swing it the wrong way. Allysyl Muse comes with 25% Infinity, which is the highest any horn aside from Ardian can reach in base stats. The Raw and Sharpness are less impressive, rocking a slightly below average 210 attack and a weirdly short amount of white sharpness for a flute made from a giant set of talons. Echo Wave Slash is a given for that, and yes, I am only mentioning this one song for right now because, foreshadowing. Back to that Sharpness though. Funnily enough, it doesn't really matter how short it is in practice, thanks to a new and improved version of the unique Seregios weapon ability. Blade Scale Honing used to just restore your sharpness after a few rolls, which made for amazing sharpness efficiency before we had skills like Protected Polish or Master's Touch. Now it works a little differently. Whenever you actively dodge an attack, your sharpness bar will be overridden by a new special sharpness, which boosts your next few hits by an incredible 1.4 times multiplier. White Sharpness only has a 1.32 times multiplier in comparison, meaning that this is basically temporary purple sharpness in a high rank only game. Hunting Horn gets 4 hits of this special sharpness, after which you go back to whatever you had at the time you dodged that initial attack. If you use recitals, this limit stretches to 6, so that takes the purple sharpness boost and also makes it all but infinite, if you could hypothetically get a roll in between every 4 attacks. That's a somewhat big ask though, so we can think about it more realistically as you gaining as many free hits as you can get by utilizing that skill. That's honestly a sweet deal for a unique weapon ability, because on top of the extra sharpness, the added boost takes that below average 210 raw and brings it much higher than it looks. The bubble on this horn also conveniently gives you an evasion and movement speed buff, so getting those dodges to activate Blade Scale Honing should be much easier. This horn pairs well with the Seregios armor set, which mainly revolves around Adrenaline Rush. With a 2-piece set bonus, you gain a duration increase of 15 seconds on the extra attack power after a dodge, and an additional 15 if you dodge again while it's active for a potential total of 1 minute. The 4-piece set bonus adds an additional 5% attack buff, similar to the Lord Soul bonus from Arch Tempered Apex armor. If we're going for a gimmick here, I would say we might as well go all in, so I'd suggest running the full 4-piece with the Zoshia chest and max out Adrenaline Rush for the full 30 attack. That on top of the extra 5% will really help cover that low raw, and in exchange, that high base affinity makes up for the lack of slots on this set compared to others. Dodging attacks is the key to unlocking the full potential of this set, and that should be a breeze thanks to your Echo Bubble. See, the evasion bonus is equivalent to Evade Window 3, and it also stacks with the actual skill, bringing you to a total of Evade Window 4 thanks to the built-in point from your armor. If you can play in a way that has you avoiding and counterattacking, this build can be surprisingly strong. But the catch is that if you can reliably beat out a monster to the point where it's constantly toppled over, you won't get as many chances to turn on your gimmick. You can more or less get away with it with the improved Adrenaline Rush boost thanks to the increased uptime, but getting the most out of Blade Scale Honing requires more frequent activation. Now, unfortunately, past the neat evade-based build potential, this is where the synergy ends. Which is ironic considering how well all the pieces came together for the Lagiacrus Hunting Horn we just reviewed in the last video. Let's start with the song list. We just touched on a bit of what we could probably assume the main gimmick of this horn is, right? we can all safely agree that the aim with Allysyl is to dip, duck, dive, dash, and dodge around attacks while also throwing out power-up jabs of your own, right? So if anyone can explain why they gave this horn a set of songs tailored mostly for taking hits better, I am all ears. Defense up, stun negate, wind pressure negate, sonic barrier, offset melody. I guess one can technically say that stamina use reduce fits the dodge-based theme we started out with by saving you some stamina to roll with, but then one would also have to catch some hands for being annoyingly optimistic. I'm not saying the song lists necessarily have to fit every horn to a T, most don't in fact, but this one is probably the biggest contradiction we could have ever gone with. Purple, Red, Orange probably would have been a much better pick due to the Restore Sharpness song fitting the other thematic part of Saragios' whole thing, or maybe we could have gone back to the Purple, Blue, Orange list it originally had. We can only dream about what it could have gotten though. Back in reality, if you're using this horn's gimmick properly, you'll most likely just be getting your usual self-improvement up and then spamming slash waves. That's it. Maybe with a little help from a secondary attack up horn to bolster up that 210 raw. Now, slashing waves benefit from the high base affinity nicely, even if the rest of your sound waves don't. The elephant in the room I've been dancing around for most of this video though, is the main thing that unravels Allysyl Muse at the seams. Cuts it right off of the kneecaps. Stops it from really being great. Alright, I'll stop stalling. You know that amazing 40% damage boost this horn gets for the low price of a few dodge rolls? Yeah, it doesn't affect sound waves at all, because those don't scale with sharpness. That means that your echo waves, the second hit on your recitals and encores, all the extra bursts from your echo bubbles, tallying up to about a third of Hunting Horn's damage output on average, all of that misses out on the benefit of Saragios' main weapon gimmick. If we were back in 4th gen where sound waves weren't really a thing in our moveset, or if we had sharpness scaling like we did in Rise, this wouldn't be an issue, but since neither is the case, well, it is. And a significant one at that. To put it into perspective, let's take the current best raw damage Hunting Horn in the game, which I haven't reviewed yet, so I guess I'll need to move that up the list soon. Guardian Resounding Galahad. We'll dive more into the details when it gets its own video, but for now let's just leave it at saying that this thing is near perfectly built to be a general purpose powerhouse. In both of their ideal sets, Galahad in the usual meta Gore Ray set and Allysyl with its 4-piece Saragios build, these two are actually pretty darn close. On physical hits, where Allysyl can take advantage of either White Sharpness or Blade Scale Hone's Sharpness multipliers. On sound-based attacks where its raw attack is the main stat that matters, Galahad pulls ahead by a good amount. For those interested, I'll throw the effective raw comparisons on the screen. As you guys can see with those, low attack on a raw horn, even one with a damage boosting gimmick, isn't exactly doing it any favors. To supplement this, we kinda have to give it attack up from a secondary horn, and to be fair in that case to Galahad since it already has attack up, we'll throw it infinity up. And speaking of which, it's worth paying attention to the fact that Allysyl is creeping up as close as it does with 0 offensive songs in its list. When you add one, even with Galahad getting some extra affinity from its own pocket horn, Allysyl only gets better. Its lead on physical hits get wider, and while the sound attacks are still weaker than Galahad's, the gap shrinks noticeably. That's why it's an absolute shame that there's no sharpness scaling on sound waves, because if there was, we'd be crowding ourselves a new strongest raw horn. One with a very interesting playstyle based around evasion, and a set of defensive buffs for 1-2 punch of survivability. You shouldn't be taking any hits, but if you do, you'll take them a lot easier. So I guess technically there is some synergy there, in the hypothetical world anyway. Back over again in the harsh reality, we've got a horn that looks lackluster on the surface, really gets great once you start looking at it in more detail, but then gets disappointingly held back again by game mechanics at the last second. So what's my conclusion on Allysyl Muse? Use it? Skip it? Well, it depends. I am kinda bummed that they handicapped the darn thing with poor song choices and sound damage calculations, because we by all means could have had a real monster of a horn on our hands. You'd better believe I'm putting in a request to adjust the ladder in those Capcom feedback forums and crossing my fingers all the way up until August. We don't know what they'll be, but we do know that Hunting Horn is getting some more buffs in the near future, and proper sharpness scaling is a tweak that'd change things on a fundamentally huge way. Not just for Allysyl, of course, but its situation probably illustrates just how significant of a detriment that design choice is. I suggest you all throw that in your forums too. But back to the horn in question. I don't know. I guess I'd probably file it straight under meme build / strategy, but that's not exactly the same as me saying it's bad, I guess. The meme strat is admittedly fun to play, almost like a return to 4th gen where Hunting Horn didn't have most of its fancy new tools. And when all the conditions are met, it's pretty powerful for something that I technically wouldn't suggest using seriously. All things considered, it's not exactly great, but it also could have been a lot worse. So use it if you wanna, but unless we stumble across something that makes this a lot better, you're not missing out on a must-have if you pass on this one. With both the Title Update 2's new additions covered now, I'm really gonna get on covering more of the base game roster, just in case an event quest or future update brings us a new horn that really changes up the game. Until then though, this has been another K-Plays, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.